Podcast.
It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. I'm David Hooper. BigPodcast.com is the site if you are looking to grow your podcast, make more money with your podcast, spread your message, make people care about your podcast. Anything podcast marketing related, BigPodcast.com is where to go. I've got a newsletter. It comes out every Friday. This is the audio version of that newsletter. It's got additional commentary, some other thoughts on the things that I'm talking about. The first thing, let's get real about podcasting gear. With the new year here, I'm seeing something that happens every new year. It's almost like everybody heading to the gym in January. You know that it's going to happen. And that is that people get real excited about upgrading their equipment. Two very common situations. One, podcasters think upgrading their equipment will make them better podcasters. Two, podcasters who think they can't podcast until they have the right equipment. Equipment is not going to make you a better podcaster. It may make you sound better. Arguably, it can do that, especially from the $0 to $60 range where you're going from a tin can and a string to a USB microphone, maybe the ATR 2100, the Samson Q2U. If you're not familiar with those mics, go to bigpodcast.com. I've got them linked. They're pretty much considered the standard starting mics in the podcasting community. But when you go from one of those mics, a $60 mic to a $500 mic, like an Electro Voice RE20, standard broadcasting mic that you're going to see in radio stations, it's not going to help you that much. Will a radio person be able to tell the difference? Yeah, maybe. Would I be able to tell the difference? I don't know. My ears aren't that good. And that's my point. The average listener, probably not. We're listening to podcasts on car stereos. We're listening to them in headphones, cheap earbuds or these Bluetooth headphones. I've got some AirBuds Pro or Earbuds Pro or AirPods Pro, whatever they're called. They change the sound of audio. They're weird. They've got some kind of noise cancellation feature on them, and that's great for working out outside. That's primarily why I have these things. But when you're listening to podcasts, it's capturing the outside noise for the noise cancellation, and it does something weird with the audio. Anyway, my point is this. Even if you're on $200 headphones, it's not making that much of a difference to your sound. The person listening can't hear that much of a difference to your sound. $60 mic, that is all you need. Having nice equipment is helpful, but don't think that being a better podcaster automatically comes with that. Don't confuse consumption with the actual work that you need to do to start a podcast. I've got something linked. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I asked the question, if you had $100 to start a podcast, how would you spend it? If you're curious how people would spend that money, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. There's also a $500 version. So if you want to spend more than $100, I got you covered. How would you spend 100? How would you spend 500? Newsletter.bigpodcast.com to get those answers. How would I spend $100? I'd get one of those two mics that I mentioned, either a Samson Q2U or the Audio-Technica ATR 2100. Both of them USB mics. They plug directly into your computer. You're good to go. $500, you got a little bit more wiggle room. Right now, I'm going into, it's a little more than $500. The mic is about $350. It's another AT mic, AT being Audio-Technica. It's called a BP40. It's about $350 for that. A DBX processor, which is a compressor. It's a noise gate. I think those are around $250 now. Focusrite Scarlett. You can get a solo Focusrite Scarlett. I don't know, low 100s, under $200 is going to get you set up for that. So, $500 to $700, you can get some pretty good equipment, go straight into a computer. I record everything on Audacity. People make fun of me for it. I like that it's free. Not because I can't afford it. I've actually taken that Audacity file and processed this recording through something called RX. RX Advanced is the version that I use. That one, I have no idea. Maybe $500-$600 for that software. You can get something called RX Elements, which is the very basic level of RX. That's always on sale, $40-$50. So you don't need a lot of money to have a pretty competent podcast. You do need to be willing to practice your hosting, though, edit your recordings before you release them, and learn how to use that recording and also that editing software. How to crack the YouTube algorithm. A couple of days ago, I saw a video on YouTube. This blew my mind. It was a 4-minute video. It had at least 50 edits, 50 cuts. It looked amateur as hell. but it had close to 300,000 views. As a podcaster, you could do so much better than this guy did as far as delivering your message. But where most podcasters fail with YouTube is lack of understanding of how YouTube selects videos to recommend. This is how this guy got 300,000 views. Once you get in the YouTube system, YouTube says, hey, I think you'll like this video. Hey, I think you'll like this video. And people like little sheep, click, 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 click. It's like a rat with a heroin button. The YouTube algorithm keeps feeding more videos. So when you can get in on that, it gets you more views. If you've got a podcast to send people to, it can bring more people to your podcast. If you're using YouTube to get more listeners to your podcast, this information will be helpful to you. It shows you how to map out your YouTube content strategy with content clusters, how to make YouTube videos more interesting to people, but also to YouTube, so you get those recommendations, how to optimize your videos for YouTube SEO. So if somebody is searching for something, you are that thing that pops up to give them what they are searching for. If you are on YouTube or you want to be, this information will help you. It is at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Coming up this week, the Hot Docs Podcast Festival. Hot Docs' annual celebration of audio storytelling returns online. This is January 25th through 28th. It's 100% virtual this year, which means that you'll get intimate access to an incredible lineup of speakers from the comfort of your own home, wherever you are. This year's lineup is pretty impressive. Samantha Bee, Ira Glass, Michael Lewis, just to name a few. Tickets start at just $12. Interested? Newsletter.bigpodcast.com has more information. Neon Hum has a podcast editors boot camp. This is free. If you qualify for it, it is a good opportunity for you. Neon Hum's Media Editors Boot Camp is an 8-week training for people from underrepresented groups who want to become podcast editors. This boot camp runs from March to May this year. It is free for all participants, and at the end of it, Neon Hum will hire somebody. Last year, Stephanie Serrano, she was hired to work as an associate editor. Same thing for this year. There's an opportunity for you to learn. There's an opportunity for you to get a job. Here is what you will learn: how to edit scripts for structure and clarity, how to give constructive feedback that will motivate writers, how to make an outline for a limited run podcast series, how to run a table read and triage comments from multiple folks so that your writers don't get overwhelmed, what to listen for in a mix and what kind of notes to give at that stage of the process, how to give critical and constructive feedback that motivates a producer instead of deflating them. Again, there's no tuition. If you're wondering how it's being paid for, it is being made possible by Sony Music Group's fund to support social justice and anti-racist initiatives, and also Neon Hum Media. More information, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I've got an episode idea generator. It's actually a headline generator. It's meant for blog titles, YouTube titles, clickbait, but it also works for podcast episodes. You got to look at this. You type in a subject, it spits out headlines you can use, but these headlines, they also will work for your episodes. So if you want ideas for new episodes, you've got a topic, you're like, feel like I've covered everything. I don't know where to go next. I'm in a pinch. Maybe I'm not in a pinch. Maybe I just want more topics to talk about. Go to this thing. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. It's free. It's very clever. And I think in addition to giving you those ideas, because it's a headline generator, it's going to give you some great episode titles that if you're using YouTube, they're going to get attention. Just your general podcast, they're certainly going to get attention for that. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com has it. Next up, how to build podcast leverage. You felt it as a kid shooting peas from across the room with a spoon, or when you first used a calculator and you wondered why your teachers made you do long division by hand for 3 years. As we grow, our levers get bigger, and there are plenty of levers that you can use to grow your podcast audience. This is about how to build levers, extend levers, and get more done with less effort. If you're interested in that, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I have everything linked for you. Coming up next on Build a Big Podcast, I've got an interview that I did with Shrikant Joshi. This is a buddy of mine. He's a shock jock from India. If you're in the United States, you're familiar with these guys. Morning radio, similar to Howard Stern, that format, morning zoo. Every city's got one or a syndicated version of one. They also do this in India. They're also doing NPR in India. They are also doing Audible in India, MTV in India. The world is a big place. I had a great sit-down interview with Shrikant Joshi out of Pune, India. This is going to blow your mind. This is going to show you the opportunities that you have as an English-speaking person, and I'm assuming you're speaking English because you're listening to me, all throughout the world, not just here, not just India, but all throughout the world. And also, I think you're going to get a lot from him as far as production, how to put a story together, how to get interviews. Here's an interesting thing about Shrikant. Being on the other side of the world, he's several hours ahead of the United States. Well, what happens if you want to get an interview with somebody in the United States, you're getting ready to go to bed, or you're getting up and they're getting ready to go to bed? We talk about getting through problems like that. That is coming up next on Build a Big Podcast. If you have not subscribed, this is how to do it. Go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. bigpodcast.com/subscribe. You'll see 3 links, 3 options for you to subscribe. One of them, if you're listening via iPhone. The second one, if you're listening on an Android device. The third, if you need an RSS feed. You know what that is. You're a podcaster. You can listen anywhere you listen to podcasts via that RSS feed. I've got those 3 links for you. Pick the one that works for you. 1 click is all it takes. They are at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. One more announcement before I go. I've been talking about this book that I've been writing. I'm super excited about it. Was working on it today. It is coming together so well. And in the very near future, meaning within the next week or so, I'm going to be reaching out to podcasters. I need more stories. And I'm like this Neon Hum podcast editors boot camp. I want to work with and showcase a variety of podcasters. So if you've got a podcast and it is something different, or you are somebody who feels like you're in an underrepresented community, I would like to talk to you. But I need your information in a certain way. It's got to fit the format of the book. You've got to be doing something. Simply being in an underrepresented community, that's not enough for you to make the cut here. You've got to have a good podcast. It's got to be something worth listening to. You've got to be working. But if that's you, I want to talk to you. So stay tuned. I'm going to be announcing this. I'm really excited about it. It's a new series. It will be dripped out over the next year. It's very specific. It is very focused. The last book I did, 462 pages, 92,000 words. It was intimidating to people. It was intimidating to me. When I read the audiobook, I was, how am I going to do this? Because not only do I have to read all of it, I've got to read it perfectly. And I've got to edit it. And I've got to compress it. And I've got to get it to Audible standards where they're going to want to sell it. And people are going to want to listen to it. So believe me, I get the intimidation of a big book. These are tightly focused. They're a lot smaller. They're easier to consume. I can't wait to get them out to you. And I'd love to put you in one of them. If you want to keep on top of that, subscribe to this podcast, subscribe to the newsletter. Everything is at bigpodcast.com. I'll be making that announcement in the next week or two. You'll be the first to know. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast, the one with Shrikant Joshi, talking about the international podcasting market, the international radio market, time-shifting interviews, doing them on the other side of the world. We're going to cover all of that. That's on the next episode. Subscribe to make sure that you don't miss it, and I will see you then.